And that is what made us the people we are today.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
In the Midwest, you know the best is there waiting, so come and join the conversation. I still approve, fan and artist and creator too. This is how the challengers do. What? Keep the conversation moving along. Keep bringing comics, keep your local store strong. If it's hard, then it's a job for the challengers. Comics and conversation, y'all.
From Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago, this is Contest of Challengers, a comics industry business podcast with Patrick Brower and W. Dale Bush.
It is discouraging that in this climate we have to worry about, our homes, but also our store.
The literal climate. You don't mean like the political climate.
I mean, political climate sucks, but the literal, actual temperature, what's a better word for that? Just the climate, the weather.
Sure. The weather.
That we were just comparing bills. The electric bill at the store is so much higher than personal living electric bills. And even the gas bill at the store, like what we're not using any.
What gas?
There's
in the
still,
summertime?
Yeah, because they charge it based on an average or whatever. I don't know. It's
a scam. It's all a scam.
It's frustrating, but there's while it is warm and humid lately, it has been basically a mild summer, and you can knock on whatever wood you want if you listen to this, if you feel necessary. But we have to worry way more about violent rainstorms at the store than we do at home.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like everything's still evolving, but we used to. As a kid, I would pray for snow. Not for snow days at school, but just because snow was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
As a small business owner, I pray for no snow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it not only affects our sales for the day, as does every iteration of weather, whether it be too good or too bad, but also it affects my ability to get to the store.
Yeah, I mean, setting aside the second part, which is always a huge pain, like as someone who commutes when it is snowing or raining, everything is just more arduous. The first part is more interesting to me because that idea of any slight fluctuation or deviation in the weather adversely affects our business, I feel like is a thing that's more about how precarious the business always is and how low the total is, that like rain could take it from like, we did good today to we did real bad today.
And doing real bad today could mean we're doing real bad for the week.
Right, exactly. Like if business were really good, then having a day where it's like, well, 25% less people came in because it was rainy and overcast the whole day, could just be like, well, we didn't do as great as we could have. Instead of like, oh God, now which bill doesn't get paid this week?
I was talking to a friend this week who works in a retail establishment that's similar to ours. In fact, it sells some of the things we sell, but it sells more. It sells a little bit more broader of a product range.
Okay.
It's not specifically a comic book store.
Sure.
And it's still niche, and the main product line is product line that died but came back,
okay,
if you will.
Yes.
And it's interesting to always talk sales and business about it. However, I always have to think, yeah, but ours is so much more niche than that.
Yes.
Like, you wouldn't compare our sales to a grocery store.
No.
Even if it's a small mom and pop local grocery store.
Right.
You wouldn't...
It's a specialty bookstore. It's a niche of the niche.
Yeah. You could have, I guess, at a time, you could have compared it to like a DVD store.
Yeah, I can see that.
But those are gone.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
And even if it was like, the Exchange around the corner, the Exchange is still multiple forms of entertainment.
Yeah.
To our one.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the deck was always stacked against us. It's fine.
Yeah, we knew that when we opened a comic book shop.
Yep.
Whoever thought they were going to get rich in comic books?
It's weird though. We talk often about the acceptance of the medium and the
especially manga,
the subject matter. We just came back from seeing the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Yes.
Of which there have been many over the years.
A lot.
But I was in high school when the Turtles became a thing. But now they are such a major ingrained part of pop culture.
Yeah.
and it's great. And I just broke one of my own rules. I don't believe in the phrase pop culture anymore.
Okay.
It's just culture
Yeah, I suppose.
because it's so prevalent
Yeah.
that it's not. You don't have to explain it as like, oh no, it's this specific part of. No, it's just culture.
Yeah, you don't really have to explain the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, but I just
To
mean like
an American audience.
it's comic books in general, or superheroes in general, or superhero movies, or what. They're not pop culture; they're culture.
Yeah.
You can. I'm sorry, 1960s. We're taking the designation pop out of the vernacular.
Yeah, take that.
Pop art. This, Dal, while it may be episode 649 of Contest of Challengers,
Okay.
it actually represents 14 years of this podcast.
Oh, golly.
The first episode dropped on July 31st, 2009.
Wow.
And
And
had
was like
we...
6 minutes long. I'm serious.
It was like,
real short.
12, 15 minutes.
Real short.
It was just you and I talking, which is what it
We
became.
didn't know what it was going to be.
Had we, and we had no idea what we were doing with it in the beginning.
No.
Like there was no fanfare. Like literally the first post I did on, I don't know, Twitter or Facebook was just, well, I guess we inadvertently have a podcast.
Yeah, it was the first iteration of it, and that was for maybe a few months, a year, I can't remember, was us, you and I individually talking to customers for an individual episode. We would just kind of
Pick somebody who was there.
corral somebody who happened to be in that we, knew well enough as a customer to say, hey, would you mind just chatting here for a few minutes? Because it wasn't scheduled or anything.
Right,
So
it
it was
was-
like, do you have like 10 minutes before you leave
Yeah.
to talk about like what you collect and why you collect it and what you're reading right now and what you enjoy?
If you look back on those early episodes,
Mm-hmm.
so many of those people don't shop with us anymore.
Yeah, because again, it would just, when we would have time to do it, would mostly be days that were slow, and slow means your regular customers are not coming in then. So
Yeah.
we would have to basically like chat with someone at the counter and then be like, hey, we also do this thing. Would you want to do this? And those episodes weren't great because we didn't necessarily know those people. We didn't have a good rapport with them. They didn't necessarily feel like fully opening up to really have a dialogue about it. They were a little guarded or a little bit nervous. And the episodes aren't great because we didn't have a good structure for them. We didn't have a good idea. And eventually we got tired of doing them because it always felt like, oh, God, we've got to find someone at the last minute
Right.
to try and record something. And that sucked, but at least it's done.
Well, we
And
didn't
that,
do it.
That attitude did not necessarily leave the podcast, even as we transitioned into a different form of it.
We didn't necessarily do it weekly. We did it whenever.
Right.
So this is episode 649.
Mm-hmm.
If we had been doing this weekly
Right.
from the beginning, we'd be 82 episodes further into the numbering.
Sure. And the
Than
other,
we are?
The other thing to consider is that there was a break in it. I think we kind
a
of
couple of breaks.
finished doing the first phase of it, and then we had a discussion about like, what if it was just you and me talking about the business? Because that's something that at least we could control the schedule of, and we would have a better idea of how to kind of present that to people.
Right. And then we brought that back, calling it season 2.
Right. So there was like a definite gap in there of us feeling like the first format had run its course and not thinking of a second format
Right.
yet.
And there was some points, like during one of the 24-hour comic book days that we did,
Oh, yeah.
we did mini episodes with a bunch of people.
Sure.
And then edited them all together into one bigger episode, but those were all called, like, I don't know, 49A, 49B, 49C, and then it
Sure.
just became 49 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there have been a couple of lost episodes, a couple of, I think, 2 Patreon exclusive episodes that don't count to the numbering.
Okay.
So the numbering is like, so we came back as season 2, episode 1, episode blah blah blah, but then
Right.
we merged it to just be
Yeah, we just said the number was,
Yeah.
here's the full roster of
Yeah.
episodes.
and then we were told years ago by James Van Alzel to drop the number because it's too intimidating for new listeners.
Uh-huh. You just
So-
want to have like a subtitle or something.
Yeah, so just a title.
Okay.
So we did, and then a little after that, he brought the numbering back onto his.
Uh-huh.
He's like, "Well, I want to celebrate how long I've been doing this," like because he's in the 800 stuff. But we never brought it back. But it's always in the description,
Yeah,
and it's in my notes, and we know.
and I don't think that this isn't like a narrative
It's not
podcast. Like you could definitely skip episodes or drop in whatever.
Oh, there's a theme. It's definitely a theme that
that's
runs
true.
through. But anyway, it's 649 episodes
Well, congrats.
so far. And that is ridiculous. And literally, and most people know this, when somebody is in the store and that says, "Oh, I listened to the podcast," I just immediately say, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, we always want it to be better.
We do want it to be better. But I think that there's...
And yet I'm not willing to do any work to make it better.
Weird.
I just want it to be better.
One of the offshoots of the groups of people that listen to us are fellow retailers, which we appreciate. And, you know, everybody, we like... I love listening to other retailers talk. Ike Manoff from Cape and Cowell, who just won the Eisner.
Yeah,
was just
Spirit of Retailer
awarded the
Award. Yeah.
Eisner Spirit of Comics Retailer Award.
Yeah, congrats.
Was just on Off Panel, so I listened to that this week, and I didn't realize how new into retail he is compared to us old, long in the tooth
You need
old
retailers
people.
like that.
You do, you definitely do.
Definitely need the new blood.
But also, it's funny to always hear other people's journeys into retail and all the other avenues they took and the jobs they held. So it made me want to, and actually this comes from, he did list other jobs he had, but it comes from David Harper talking to Chris Schweizer
Okay.
on the week before on Off Panel, listing all of Chris Schweizer's job
Yeah.
before cartoonist.
Sure.
And it made me want to sit down and make a comprehensive list of all of my jobs.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I haven't done it.
Okay.
And I don't want to do it right now because it would be me trying to remember things.
Sure.
And, like, I think you could do yours a little bit easier.
Yeah. There's not a lot of them.
But I mean, mine would, I'm fine. I'm going to try to do it anyway.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I would mow lawns, I would shovel driveways, and I would babysit.
Okay.
When I became job age, I remember walking around local area malls, like the Brookhaven Mall, going into every business, asking if they were hiring, looking for a job. I worked at a gas station. I pumped gas. And this is a full-service station, so you cleaned the windows and checked oil on every car that came in.
Wow.
Yeah. Full-service stations.
Wow.
And would check tires if requested.
Sure.
Yeah. I worked at Dunkin' Donuts, which was a much grosser job than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
I-
Was it time to make the donuts?
Well, I didn't get to make the donuts.
Okay. They also don't even make the donuts
But
anymore. That's the
the
weirdest
vats-
thing about Dunkin' Donuts is they just get delivered.
The vats full of glaze were always disgusting,
Oh, I'm sure.
but delicious. Don't stick your head in one. Don't do it. That knocked me off track. Damn. I was a overnight shelf facer at Jewel. You know, moving stocking the shelves,
Sure.
moving everything forward. I did that.
Neat.
I worked in 2 separate video stores, one in high school, one in college, and those were my first major customer-facing retail jobs. And a lot of the way I interact with people and some of the same shtick I've been doing this whole time, like since high school.
Right.
The same kind of lines and patter has been since then. I drove a delivery truck for printing supplies and computer equipment, and I had one of the routes was downtown, and I hated it.
Sure.
Because it's mainly Lower Wacker and stuff like that. That was I forgot I was a framer at Michael's.
Oh, yeah.
That's
a good story.
I was a telemarketer at Exelon Lawn Care. I was actually a temp. I was a temp for a summer, so I would work in an office for a week or for a day or for a couple of days. But then we got long-term assigned to Exelon Lawn Care.
Okay.
So not only was I a phone solicitor, but I wasn't getting the full hourly wage because the temp agency got a portion of it.
Sure.
So it was a horrible job that I hated, that I got less than everybody else who was doing it got per hour. Those were like during college jobs. Then out of college, I very quickly started working at a comic book shop.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So that stayed too current.
Uh-huh.
But also, I was planning to be a full-time freelance artist, graphic designer. So I had a whole bunch of side gigs on that. I worked for the Ford Motor Company, doing car illustrations on their damage report forms. I worked for the Edison Folding Carton Company. I designed like ball bearing packaging.
Okay.
And like for a long time, I would keep the box. When I'd see a box that I made, I'm like, I made that box.
Yeah.
Like that sounds kind of neat.
Sure.
Like I did a fish tour T-shirt. But I mean, what I'm giving you are individual jobs, but it's one job.
Right.
It's freelance artist is the
Right.
job, but those were the bigger clients.
Those were the freelance jobs.
The visual identity for the Black Business Expo for a year. I think it was 91, maybe. And then I was a comic book inker working for such prestigious companies you may have heard of. Marvel Comics.
I haven't heard of them. What do they do?
I don't know. They make my life miserable. Image, whole bunch of indies. Boom, IDW, things like that. A lot of it was who you know kind of stuff,
Right.
Or somebody needs a fill-in. A bunch of work for Devil's Due in the beginning,
Sure.
But also I became.
Well, you did live in Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. For a period of time, I was Andrew Peapoy's assistant,
Oh, sure.
which meant basically filling in blacks and erasing pencils and stuff.
Sure.
But I would always go in and add stuff to things to
Smart.
be able to point to it and be like, "Oh, shadowed image. See the reflection on that Spawn's chain right there? I did that."
Smart.
Yeah. And in fact, I don't have it back yet, but I did some. What was it? Oh man, Mutant X.
Yeah,
Tom
Mutant
Rainey
X.
Mutant X. There's a specific double page spread that I bought that I had worked on. So it's drawn by Tom Rainey, penciled by Tom Rainey, written by Howard Mackey, drawn by Tom Rainey, inked by Andrew Peapoy, and ghosted by me.
Right.
So I wound up buying those 2 pages down the line when I found them out in the wild years and years later.
Right.
And I don't have them in my possession yet because I had asked Andrew to sign them because I see him all the time. Then he's like, "Do you want me to take them to a show and have Tom Rainey sign them?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay." It's like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And
There was an entire pandemic in there, so I guess that's
Yeah.
somewhat explicable.
He got Howard Mackey to sign them, and he had Tom Rainey sign them, but he had it in his head that he wanted each page signed by each person. And to me, it's one page. It's,
Right.
It's a double
It's
page
one
spread.
image. Yeah.
So he signed them both, and Howard Mackey signed them both, but Tom Rainey only signed one. So he kept them until he saw Tom Rainey again to sign the other one. So now they're officially signed, but I haven't
Right.
seen Andrew. Actually, I have seen Andrew as soon as he just hadn't had pages with him.
Right.
So I'll have those back. But I also worked on Knuckles the Echidna for Archie. The most work I did would have been for the Horseman for Griot Enterprises. I did 3 issues of that.
Right.
But yeah, I did an Angel cover for IDW. I did a Black Plague cover and a bunch of Hero Squared covers for Boom.
Yep.
And-
Or Joe Abraham, I think. or
Well,
something.
yeah, exactly. He was a good penciler.
He was.
And then was horribly disappointed to find out that when Boom did the entire Hero Squared collection,
Yep.
where they reprinted all the covers, they only reprinted the pencils, not the inks.
That sucks.
And apparently they just we didn't have those files. I'm like, I have
I
them,
could give them to you.
but I don't think they even knew that I inked them.
No. You did a Transformers Beast Wars exclusive
I
variant?
did a Beast Wars cover.
Over, I want to say Nick Roach.
Nick Roche, yeah.
With colors by Josh Bertram.
Yeah, and I have it signed by Nick Roche. And did you get it signed by Josh Bertram or not?
Did, I think so.
Yeah, which is weird to have him sign that because he didn't do the colors on that. He colored that cover, but the original art he didn't
Right.
color. But yeah, a lot of that stuff is fun because I could just print it out on board myself, and
Sure.
then they get to keep the pencils, I get to keep the inks, et cetera, et cetera. Have I gotten to all the jobs? I think so. Yeah, it doesn't count stuff like volunteering to clean up at a local church's Las Vegas night because they give
No.
you $200 to work the night.
No.
And I did it with different people each time.
We're not talking about gig economy work.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Dal, why don't you yours?
When I was 12 years old, I started working at a comic shop, and then I pretty much done that nonstop. alongside that, I did 2 other things. There was like season or 2 that I ended up working at a Blockbuster because a friend was managing or assistant managing a Blockbuster, and I needed some money. And he's like, you could just come on and it's no big deal. And I'm like, great. And I hated doing it. And he ended up not staying at that Blockbuster. And I was doing it some nights while I was also still working a full day job at a comic shop. And then there was a point where that comic shop was moving across the street. It was going to be so much work. I told the Blockbuster, like, hey, I can't be on the schedule for like a month. I got to go do this other thing at my day job. And I was part-time. So they're like, all right, just let us know when it's over and we'll put you back on the schedule. I never let them know. And they never contacted me. And I think we were both happy with that arrangement.
Yeah.
So it was like, great, done. And then for a year or 2, I can't remember how long it was, I had a full-time day job managing a comic shop. And then I took a full-time night job doing third shift stuff for Blue Cross Blue Shield affiliate, which was basically just making sure the computer's backed up okay and then delivering prints around the building. It was so little work. I loved it because it was a full-time, real good paycheck with benefits. For an 8-hour shift, I would do maybe an hour and a half of work a night because there were 2 people on the shift. And most of it is just at certain times you run these automated processes on the server to make sure everything's backing up and you change out these tapes or whatever. And 9 times out of 10, nothing goes wrong. And if something goes wrong, there's someone else higher up than you on the totem pole that you contact and say, this is happening. And they're the ones trained to actually fix it. So your job is just to make sure
that they know it's broken.
Yeah, that nothing goes wrong. And if it does, someone knows about it. And then delivering prints around the building, the whole building was empty. It was a 4-story, 5-story office building that was completely shut down for the night. So you load all the prints up on the cart, you push them around the building, and only one person on the shift has to do that each night. So basically, we would just switch off. Like, Mike would do it Monday night, and I would do it Tuesday night. So Monday night, I'm just watching the processes go and watching DVDs. So I got to get through all of Scrubs and all of The Shield and everything Netflix would send me out.
Physical media.
Yeah, exactly. I was on at one point, I think I was on the 8 at a time plan because I was just copying them as soon as they would come in and sending them back out so I at least have a bigger library of stuff. And also I was watching them so fast because it's a season at the time was like a DVD was 3 or 4 episodes. So in a night I could get through a disc or 2 maybe, depending on how long they were.
Sure.
And I couldn't, you send it back in the mail and they get it back and they send you the next one. So if you're doing 1 or 2 at a time, it could be several days before anything gets to you. So 8 at a time means you are always having a new disc to watch. Eventually I ended up opening a comic shop in the middle of, so the night job I was doing and then the daytime job I was running the comic shop. But eventually I had a difference of opinion enough with the owner at the comic shop that I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't making me happy at all. So I left the comic shop, kept the night job. A few months later, talked to Patrick on the phone and said, hey, why don't we open a comic shop? He said,
absolutely not.
That's stupid. And I'm like, okay, but, and then by the end of it, he's like, okay, fine. He gave in and always regretted it.
Just wanted him to hang up the phone.
And so since then, it's just been Challengers. So really, it's just...
well, that's not quite true.
No? Was there another thing?
They overlap. You said since then it's been Challengers. But
they
overlapped for a
Yeah, they
while.
overlapped for not for a while. I mean, for
technically April to October?
6 or 7 months? I mean, basically all through the build-out, and then once the store was open, we opened March 31st, and by November of that year, I was like, I cannot keep doing these 2 jobs. It's killing me. Because by that point, not counting
I think
a
the
brief
deadline
period,
was your 30th birthday?
Yeah, that was the part where I'm like, I can't do this. And honestly, there's part of me that regrets quitting when I did, because the money was not sufficient at Challengers yet, and it was a big additional strain on the store for me to need to get a full paycheck when we literally could not afford it, and that precipitated a lot of really bad things happening for both of us in the first couple years. And if I had stuck out that job, and the joke of it was a year or 2 later, they eliminated that position.
Yeah.
And everybody got a parachute. And it's what if I had stayed? And obviously that was not helpful to Challengers to have me working a full-time night job, because there were days where it's I'll come in at 2 or 3 and then I'll work the rest of the day and then I'll go to the night job afterwards, because the times didn't overlap. I would leave Challengers at 7 and start the night job at 8. And by that point, I could get from the loop from Bucktown to Aurora in an hour. It was fine, despite it physically destroying my body. But there were days where I would literally get to the store at like 5 o'clock at night because it was just, I was so exhausted. I could not get out of bed and get to the store like that early in the day, like by 2 o'clock, because I was getting off work at 5 in the morning, basically. And
yeah, it's weird to think back that for the first however many months, I was working 6 days.
Right.
And my day off is Sunday, but that's always family day.
Right.
So it was...
Yeah.
And they were, the hours that we still haven't gotten back to.
Right. I think I was working... Theoretically, I was trying to work, I think, like Sunday through Friday, I think.
Yeah.
Because I needed Saturday off. Because Friday was always... At the Blue Cross Blue Shield affiliate, Friday nights were always the longest because that was, like, weekly processes would happen in addition to the daily processes. So even though the shift was 8 to 4, I was frequently getting out when the sun was coming up.
Yeah.
So I definitely could not do a day at the store on Saturday. I needed to go home and collapse. But yeah, if I'd stuck it out, I would have been less help to the store, but I would have been less of a burden to the store. So I've always regretted that, of not finding a way to keep going with it.
Don't look back. You can't change anything about it now.
I can't. I mean, I'm not saying it keeps me up at night or anything, but when I think about
numbered
regrets, that's definitely on the list.
And then were seriously maimed in a car accident from that falling asleep going to work one day.
That only almost happened when I was working at the other comic shop. There was definitely a day where something had gone wrong with the processes, and I was basically, at the time, what I was doing was I was getting off at 4 in the morning, getting home by like 4:30 to 4:45.
And then opening a store at 11.
Getting up at 10 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then going to the store and working all day. Like, it was insane. And there was a morning...
opening Challengers gave you a break.
There was a morning where I went so late at the Blue Cross Blue Shield affiliate that it was like I was leaving there and then driving to the comic shop. And that was incredibly dangerous. I definitely was like... kind of nodding off while I was driving. Because it was like middle of the week by that point. So I'd already been a few days into getting like 4 hours of sleep a night.
Right.
So that was a point where I'm like, this is super duper dangerous. Like,
and it wasn't like a drive from Bucktown to Aurora. It was
from one part of Aurora to another.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was like a 15-minute drive. And it was a drive that I could and possibly did do in my sleep. But yeah, that was the only portion where I'm like, this is too dangerous. Which is why it eventually made more sense. Like, when I was working a day job that I did not feel appreciated in and didn't feel really connected to, versus a night job that was dead simple, didn't require anything of me, and paid really well, I was like, I guess I'll just do the night one. Thank you.
Also, no one threw tantrums at that one.
No, I never saw my boss. They work days. So yeah, it was really just from 12 years old to today, it's basically just been almost uninterrupted comic shop with a couple side gigs.
Yep. Okay.
That's it for me.
And that is what made us the people we are today.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
It's now time to thank our Patreon supporters, including our annual patrons, Becca Hilburn and Joseph Coco, Bren Helt, Dal's mom, Diane Bush, President of the Brian Garside Fan Club, Django Boren, Philip Sablik from Boom Studios, Jose Villagomez, Josh Crowley of Westfield Comics, our bestest wrestling watching pal, Michael Lee, Michael Romanenko, our patrons who have created their own tier, Andrew, Drew Troit Aaliyah, Bridget K. Neville, Chris Burton, Claudine Neville, our other generous patrons from the Say My Name pledge level, Ben-Hur Benedict Calaguas, Brad Brooks from Dumb Shit Done Well, Manage Comic Zone, Brian Garside, Christopher Haith, Drew Triner and Ashley Edwards, Challengers Reservist Fallon Mackerline, my brother George Brower, Heidi D., Holly Aitchison, Jacob Sorelli of Kamikaze, Josh Trigg, Mark Hammond of Aw Yeah Comics, Margie, Keith, Logan, and Malcolm Springham, Matt Armstrong, Mitchell Davies of All Star Comics in Melbourne, Australia, Morgan Dynamite Perry, Nick Baldwin, my longtime pal Robert Burns, Ron Payne, Sean Bowers, Tad Eggleston and Johnny Williams, Thomas Nagovin of Century Guild, Walt Grogan, Walt's Comic Shop from Berlin, Germany. And if you want to hear your name thanked on this very podcast once a month, head over to patreon.com/challengers and pledge at the $5 Say My Name level. And a big thank you to all our other patrons at the various other pledge levels. I want to segue into some Managed Comics questions.
Okay,
And
that's a really smooth segue.
I want to preface by saying that these are questions I'm asking you. These are not...
Okay. This isn't stealth stuff for Brian Garza.
Right. This is not like, oh, there's a
scribble
bug
down.
or whatever and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
These are things that... And I don't often report issues because I assume that either you already have or it's something that they're aware of or something else or whatever.
Yeah, I would say I report 80 to 85% of the bugs I come across. There's honestly been a couple times where I'm like, I already gave Brian some huge thing that he's working on that he shouldn't have to because it's basically someone else... Like, it's a bad data thing that he shouldn't have to have fixed. And because of that, there is a tiny thing that's not like a crucial thing that I can work around. I'm not going to tell him about this because that's just going to bum him out.
So what these are questions I'm asking you because you have a much better understanding of the program.
Okay.
And you may have answers for these.
I can try.
And I only wrote down one, but there's actually two.
Okay.
So the first one is a thing that comes up often when a subscriber wants an invoice for their books. We're going to mail their books out. So
Right.
we send them an invoice. They can't pay that invoice because it lists books as out of stock.
Right.
What causes that?
So in that...
And can it be fixed?
Yes, and in the specific instance you're referring to, it will only ever be an in-stock, like an active item, not a draft item. So like their subscription stuff is all flagged behind the scenes to keep selling even if it's out of stock.
So let's say they say, oh, can you add a copy of Incredible Hulk #2 onto my list?
For example, if it's an Incredible Hulk #2, and because it's on the invoice, if we're adjusting the inventory because we're looking at the shelves and we're like, system says we have 2, we only have 1, because they haven't paid their invoice yet, it's not removed from the system. The system still
Right.
thinks that is a for sale copy because no one's bought it yet.
Right.
If we had like reserved the items on that order, it would have taken it out of the system and then, like, long story short, we adjusted the inventory because we saw 1 copy on the shelf and the system said we had 2. We did have 2. The other one was in someone's box.
Okay.
So that when we sold the last one off the shelf,
It went
to 0. And so when the first person tried to pay their invoice that was sent before the second person bought the final issue, now the system's like, well, you can't sell what's on this invoice because you don't have it anymore.
Right. Okay.
So then I had to go in basically and increase the quantities on those. It was 2 books.
Which your
One
reason
was Incredible Hulk 2, which we had adjusted down, and the other was Santos Sisters, that for some reason the system said we had 0 and we had like 3 on the shelf.
I think it's because we got those from 2 different distributors and it freaked out over
Something like
how
that.
it was
I
flagged
think,
for
I think
subscribers.
it made 2 items, and I think we ended up removing 1 and not the other. But anyway,
Well,
so I
one of the-
increased the quantities, and then they were able to check out.
So the reason that comes up is because we have people who request invoices and then don't pay them for days.
Yeah, and again, it shouldn't ever matter on subscription-only things because subscription-only things are draft items, not active items, and every single draft item can be sold even if we're out of stock on it. I did that early on because I was finding that happening where draft quantities weren't syncing up correctly, and people were trying to pay invoices, and it's like, okay, I got to find what thing on this invoice the system doesn't think we have anymore. So
Sure.
now, every time we receive draft items, which is every subscription version of a comic, those are all flagged so that you can sell them even if they're out of stock. So no one's subscription-only invoice should ever get bounced back because we don't have it in stock or the system thinks we don't have it in stock.
But if you change the quantity
Right.
and they don't pay it right away, there's the jeopardy of somebody trying to buy it online.
Right, which again is why if it's an active item, which means something that's for sale on the shelves instead of something that's pulled for subscribers before, like when we're receiving things, what you do want to do is essentially mark the invoice as on hold,
Okay.
because then it removes the invoiced quantities from the system until either the invoice is paid or a certain deadline passes. In my mind, every single invoice by default, as in at a Shopify level, should be reserving those items.
Right.
And it's frustrating that it took them years to even get to the point where they offered it as an option, but it's still an option that you, the user, have to go in and say, yes, this invoice I've sent someone of items I have physically set aside, I don't want to just sell them to the next person who goes to the website and tries to buy them. That's why I sent an invoice. But not how Shopify thinks of things.
And that correlates to the workaround we have to do for subscribers who take books off of the shelf to put on hold until they come back later.
Yeah.
Now, I usually only do that when it's a handful of books. I don't do it for onesies and twosies. But should we do it for everything now?
It's tricky because it's the dumb answer is it will only matter for the books that you don't do it for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
The stuff that you've decided this isn't a big deal will inevitably turn out to be a big deal, and the stuff that you go to the trouble of reserving, no one's ever going to try and buy online. The other way of looking at it is I always think about it in terms of how quickly is this stuff going to get bought? Like if someone's taking a whole stack of stuff from the shelves and they're like, I'm going to get these on Friday, well, they're all going to go on sale on the website on Thursday. So yes, I'm definitely going to ask for those to be reserved on Shopify so that in Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, no one tries to buy those. If it's somebody who's like, I'm going to get these later on a Wednesday, they're not even going to be online by then, so I don't really care.
Right.
And similarly, if it's something that's been sitting on the shelves for a while and someone's like, I'm just going to come get this in a couple days, I'll just risk that no one's going to try and buy it. But yeah, obviously, if it's a huge stack of stuff and it's brand new things, it's like these need to be taken out of the system or else someone's inevitably going to try to buy at least 2 of them.
The next Managed Comics question
Yes.
is, do you know what was causing the current repeated error of some of last week's books still populating into subscribers' accounts when they've already bought them?
I don't. And that's maybe something that we should open up an actual legitimate bug report with Managed Comics. It's something that's happened before, and we always thought it was tied to a specific error we had with an invoice that was being imported. But now it's happening regularly with invoices that didn't have any errors. And it's, to explain the error, for anyone who's using Managed Comics or might work for Managed Comics, basically what's happening is that a small to large selection of random customers' subscription accounts, their customer orders, when we import the full customer order into the POS cart, and everything copies over, everything's there, when we go back into their customer order afterwards, a number of items, could be 1 or 2, could be like an entire week's worth of stuff, are somehow still on their customer order. And so we usually don't notice that until the next time they come in, and suddenly the amount of books that's showing up on the screen in the customer order field is vastly different than what we currently are holding in our hands to sell to them. Like
specifically when you even know that, oh, you were in last week and I sold you these books already.
Why is Batman Superman World's Finest still on your list? You came in last week and bought that. I remember selling it to you. So usually at that point, and this is why we really haven't reported it as an actual Managed Comics error, because
you need to finish a transaction and there's another person in line.
For it to be useful, in my mind at least, to Managed Comics, you need to have a kind of like test case. You need to go, this is what's going on. But one, you have a customer right there. So it's not like, okay, well, I can't sell you your books because I have to report this error, and then they will try and figure out a cause from it based on what they're seeing. But the other thing is that I have to immediately remove these from the list because otherwise it's going to screw up your order. So what we could do the next time we see it is, instead of deleting those things from the list, just unflag them like they're next week's books that we can't sell, and then copy over everything that is actually currently in their box. And then what you'll have left over, you can then
take a photo of or
or you can say this customer specifically, so that they have access to our database, so they can figure out, why does this person have a bunch of stuff that they already bought. I will, if you have the chance Friday or Saturday and you see it happen, just try and do that and just send that to them, so that if we have to wait until Sunday or Monday, the problem is, like, we've also frequently received next week's books, so it's going to have things that you shouldn't have on there, and also things that you should have on there that I can't sell you.
Yeah.
And that becomes maybe too much noise. But yes, I do not know why it's doing that, and it is... it's not a great bug.
It just means we have to be even more vigilant when going through their books on the list.
Yeah, the amount of vigilance we have to have sometimes. Because the additional weird thing is like... And I'm sorry to have to explain all this stuff to people who are maybe not using Managed Comics regularly, and it's maybe not a good picture I'm painting with words. Basically what happens when we take something from a customer order and we put it into a Shopify POS cart, which means we're selling it to a customer in the store at the front counter. It's two different items. Item like Batman Superman World's Finest number 17, and I picked the longest title I could possibly use in this example.
No, you could have picked one of next week's Star Wars books, which I don't have in
Star
front of
Wars,
me.
Dr. Aphra, number 36.
15th anniversary.
John Tyler Christopher.
Action
Cy
figure.
Noodles, action figure.
15th anniversary.
Return of the Jedi, 40th anniversary variant.
Those titles are way too fucking long,
way
and they
too
should
long.
never, ever, ever be
Nope.
put in the system like that.
I dislike them. But anyway, so Batman Night Terrors number 2. When we get Batman Night Terrors number 2 as a received item from Lunar Distribution, we're putting it into our database. Managed Comics creates two items, an active item and a draft item. An active item is something that you can put on your website. It's the sort of stuff that you see every time you go through our website and you're looking for a book. That's an active item.
Or if you see it on the shelf at the store,
Right.
it's an active
It's
item.
an active item. A draft item is something that basically only exists on the admin side, something that only we see as the people running the store on the website.
It's the idea of the comic.
Yeah, it's something that could be an active item, but it's not. It's a draft item. The draft item is what we use for subscription items. Since a subscription item is not something we are actively selling to anyone who wants to buy it, that's an active item. Draft item is something that only exists for subscribers. And
Why aren't they called passive items?
Couldn't tell you. So, mostly because how we're using draft items is probably never how Shopify intended. In fact, I know that's how. Because when we've tried to explain this procedure to Shopify before, they're like, you can't put draft items in an invoice. And we're like, no, we do all the time because
We have
Managed
to.
Comics figured out a hack for it. Because Shopify doesn't allow you to reserve an item, which is infuriating. Anyway, so Batman Night Terrors number 2, when we receive it, two items are created. An active item, which we sell on the shelves and we sell on the website, and a draft item that only exists for subscribers. To sell it through the point of sale system, which means a subscriber has come in and said, hey, I want my books, and one of those books is Batman Night Terrors number 2. There's a little bit of magic that Managed Comics does through the Managed Comics order helper tile. We're able to see everything that's in a customer order, all those neat little draft items. Then we hit a button and it takes those draft items, and basically what it does is it deletes one copy from the draft item and it adds one copy to the active item. And then you're selling the active item, which is all you can sell through Shopify POS, through Shopify POS. So it basically does a little juggling where it moves a copy from one to the other so you can actually sell it in store to a person. Because otherwise you couldn't sell the draft item through the point of sale system because Shopify POS is not built to let you do that. So the problem is what you're doing is you're changing two quantities. You're reducing one and you're raising another. One of the neat things you can do with the order helper tile is that, let's say you've moved your copy of Batman Night Terrors number 2 from someone's customer order to the Shopify cart. It's taken one copy away from the draft item and added one copy to the active item. But then someone, when you're checking them out, says, oh, I don't want that Batman Night Terrors number 2. You say, okay, that's fine. If you delete it from the Shopify POS cart, Patrick.
Are they saying, I don't want it at all, or I don't want it this week?
In this instance, let's say they're saying, I don't want it right now.
Okay.
I don't want to buy this today. I want to buy it next time.
Okay.
Great. You delete it from the Shopify POS cart, and what Managed Comics' order helper tile is doing magically in the background again is saying, okay, we're going to take that item and we're going to say, we're going to put it back on your customer order.
So it's we reduce the active.
It doesn't, no. So it's putting it back on your customer order, and what the customer order then is a record of what's back on hold for a customer. So next time that person comes in and they say, hey, I want to pick up my books, Batman Night Terrors number 2 is going to be on there. Great. What it does not do is re-alter the quantities. So what you've just done when you put it in the cart is you raise the active quantity by 1, and you reduce the draft quantity by 1. You removed it from the cart. Active quantity still went up by 1. So now, according to the system, you have one more active copy of that than you did before you started that transaction, despite the fact that you do not physically have one more active copy to sell to a customer. So what we found very quickly in the first few weeks when we were using the order helper tile in Shopify POS is that one thing that we would do beforehand is sometimes you bring up a cart and then you have to delete it for whatever reason. Either the customer isn't ready to check out or whatever. And we're used to just deleting the cart. Every time we were doing that, we were screwing up the quantities of multiple items. Like there were,
Everything in the cart.
yeah, we had an employee who didn't understand how this was happening, and I had to sort of figure out the math of why it was happening and why it was specifically happening to this one employee, because that employee would bring in their entire cart of dozens of books, delete that cart, and then dozens of books would have the wrong quantities that then I would have to correct on Monday. So now we are very, very leery moving over quantities into the cart that we will then have to remove and put back into the customer order. So when we accidentally move over items from a customer order that were already bought and can't be bought again, not only is that a frustration of like, okay, why does the screen say we have 28 things for this person when I'm holding 19 in my hands? Where are the other 9? And well, the other 9 they bought last week and they're still in their account for some reason. That's frustrating, and that takes additional time with the customer. But what it also does is it means that when we remove those 9 items from the cart, I got to go into those items after the person's left the store and reduce all those quantities by 1. And that's additionally frustrating.
But you don't have to do that if you delete them all before you send them over.
If you catch it before you put them in the cart, you're fine. Which is why we are now so fastidious about checking what's on the screen before we send to the cart instead of just going customer order, boom, send a cart. No, we spend a little bit more time on like the 0 step before we actually start the transaction.
And what about that copy of Batman Night Terrors 2 that they say, I just don't want this anymore?
That you can actually just move to the cart and then put back on the shelf because you've already raised the quantity by 1. You're good to go.
Yeah,
that's
the
super
easy part.
easy. It's when they put it back in their box, it's like, yes, but, oh God.
Well, I find talking about these issues, and they're not managed comics issues per se.
No, a lot
but
of them
just
are Shopify things because Shopify is so dumb. They spent so much time
They changed
doing
the
whole
back
redesign.
dashboard interface for no reason,
Yeah.
and it's less information available to you.
And that's the stuff they're working on instead of stuff where it's like, why is core functionality not a thing anymore? Oh, here's something they did do that I actually liked. And I'm like, oh, I was looking for this a week ago and it didn't do it. And I was shocked that they didn't have an ability to do this. When you are creating a draft order now, in the shipping field, you can specify that an invoice is for local pickup.
Oh.
So in case someone's like, hey, I'm going to come pick up my books. I don't need them shipped out.
I'm normally a mail-order customer, but I'm going to be in town.
Right. You can, instead of, customers can always do it on their end.
Yeah.
But it's one more step they'll have to do. And for people who don't do it a whole lot, it can be frustrating to figure out where to do it at. But this is just like from our end now we can say, no, this is a local pickup order. They don't have to go through any of the shipping stuff. I really like that. And it's classically Shopify in that I didn't know they did this. They didn't provide any like changelog or anything that I ever saw. All the stuff they ever talk about in the emails is very like, oh, you can now create bundles. And it's like, okay, yeah, you've talked about that like 4 times. How about this one little fix that I've been asking for a while? You actually did it, and you didn't talk about it.
Well, what we are going to talk about is Adam Eve,
The cartoon character.
the comic book character as well.
I'm not sure about that.
Well, we're talking about the comic book character more.
Oh, okay.
Because there was an Invincible Presents, that's the comic book, Invincible Adam Eve special that just dropped suddenly during the week of San Diego on Amazon Prime, the origin of Adam Eve.
Yeah, it's essentially a 2-episode adaptation of the, I think, 2-issue origin of Adam Eve.
1 episode.
Well, it's double length, though. Aren't they usually like half an hour?
No?
Are they usually like an hour long?
Well, it's
I haven't
slightly
watched it
it's
in like
slightly,
2 years.
slightly longer.
So, okay.
Anyway. But what it does is it is the animated adaptation of Invincible Presents Adam Eve 2-issue series from December 2007.
Is that when it was from? Oh my god.
The first issue came out December 22nd, 2007.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing the research.
I did the research specifically because 15 years ago, this weekend, what is this weekend in Chicago, Dale?
Lollapalooza weekend.
It's Lollapalooza weekend. 15 years ago, when Challengers was like 4 months old, we spent some of our advertising money on an ad in the Lollapalooza booklet.
Okay.
You get a program book, little program book. You get at Lollapalooza.
They do this, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we spent a lot of money.
I'm just giving you something to work on.
Okay.
I know exactly what
You're
it is.
yes-handing me.
Yes.
And our ad was one panel from the Adam Eve special
That we were not authorized to use.
that we didn't put any copyright information on, and it's
We did
Adam
not
Eve
ask anybody to let us do that.
punching her open hand, and it's the panel where she's saying, "Sometimes a girl just needs to punch someone with a soul patch," and then it had the Challengers logo and the information on a pink background,
It was nice.
right? So that was the ad we used in the book. So my point is that.
I'm not sure I understand.
Let me explain it to you, Siri. My
She's just
point
yes-handing you.
is that nice.
She understands.
My point is that even 15 years ago, we knew what was up.
Yeah.
You and I bought 4 pages of original art from that series.
Yeah. It took a while, but yes.
So, yeah, that's it. We're not going to go into that story, but it
Nope.
took a couple.
I didn't think we were.
Well over a year to get those pages.
Yes.
But we bought original pages from that, including the page that had that panel.
Yeah.
There's no dialogue on the panel, but
No,
we know it.
for the people who've watched the cartoon, they didn't exactly use it, but I think it's around the time when it's the dudes who were stealing dogs.
What? So you know what?
That's one of the pages.
That's where it. Yes, we have the page of her fighting the dude stealing the dogs.
Yeah.
But that's not when she says it.
Okay.
She says it in the animated version, or she says in a version of that line
Right.
in that scene.
Right.
Because in that scene, in the comic, she's just in like a hoodie and stuff.
Right.
But in the actual scene where she says the soul patch line, she's in the full Adam Eve gear.
Right.
But yeah, it is. She does make a crack about somebody having a soul patch while they're trying to steal animals from the shelter.
Yeah, or
In the
in the
animated
cartoon, I
series.
think she says it when it's the Kill Cannon guy or whatever his name is, because he actually has like a legit like soul patch.
Okay.
And maybe that's when she says it in the book, and I don't remember. I don't have any Invincible.
Specifically, what it was she says, "I hope one of you guys has a soul patch."
Okay.
Because it was literally when the animals guys were
Was
breaking.
it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
But in the comic, it's a different section because she's in the full gear. And then I posted that.
Mm-hmm.
I posted that art is hanging up at Challengers, but I have 2 of the pages in my personal collection that I was able to take photos of.
Oh, nice.
And so I posted the pages of art and told the story of us, being 15 years ahead of the curve. Hollywood is just catching up to where our mindset and our tastes are.
Correct.
We're tastemakers.
Always.
And then I dug through my digital files and found that ad and posted that as a separate post. And our friend Snake Robinson commented right away that he remembers being at that Lollapalooza because they had a free button making station.
Okay.
And he tore that ad out and made buttons of the word balloon and of the Challengers logo.
Made an illegal button. We didn't approve that.
And he said that that made up for Radiohead being the main act.
No. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So anyway, 15 years later.
15 years later, I sometimes walk by our front windows that are beautifully designed by Chris Giarusso and think, so many of these characters in the last 10 years have become major cultural icons in ways that they weren't when we had asked for certain characters to be on there, and then mostly just the ones he picked were ones where it's like they're all in movies now.
Yeah.
They're all in TV shows.
Yeah.
We had a short list, each of us, of a few characters that we wanted to see. Surprising no one, Zot, Aztec, Grimjack, not ones that Chris Giarusso had said, please can I include this?
Blue Devil.
But ones that we were like, we would love to have these on there. And then we're like, and then for you, just do whatever you want. Like whatever you think is, obviously, the better known characters would be nice, but pick whoever you want. So, he was the one who's like, Jacob Chabot's characters, Jack Staff, Savage Dragon, his G-Man characters.
Yep.
But then around that, he did Supergirl and
Black Panther.
Superman and Black Panther and Luke Cage and we asked for Daredevil, but all these characters that have since all the Marvel movies, all that stuff, like they weren't necessarily in those movies yet, and
I can't believe he decided to do every member of the Eternals.
that was smart. Well, maybe it wasn't smart.
He did. There's no Eternals there.
It's true. So who knows what the next windows will look like and what characters might be way ahead of the curve then.
Or 3 years behind the curve now.
No, I think they'll still be ahead. We'll see.
This is just a
When
note.
they put Vision in the Vision Quest TV show, ahead of the curve.
Right. I mean, I could just point to the Vision tattoo I've had for years.
You could, it's true. Jason Murray, is that?
Yes, right. Jason Murray. This is just a note to any creator who sends emails out to comic shops pitching their book.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to have, the title, synopsis, who the book is for, definitely, order codes if you have them, release dates, but also, please always include a PDF of your book.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a single issue, send us the PDF single issue. If it's a full graphic novel, send us as much as you can. I know sending the full graphic novel may not be
Sure.
easy to do size-wise or whatever. Give us as much information. Do not send us 4 or 5 preview pages.
No.
That's not enough. We're going to hold it against you.
Or I probably just won't care. Like, I'll look at them and go like, okay, I still don't know what this is.
If I can't read the whole book,
Right.
I'm not going to read it.
Nope.
So if you're going through all the motions of, if you have a Dropbox account, put in Dropbox, send it there. I don't care if you watermark it. I don't care if you password protect it or whatever. I know you don't want it to just be like giving it away, but you're not. You're giving us the opportunity to know more about it, to hand sell it to people when it comes
To
out.
decide to carry it in our stores.
A lot of the books that we talk about on this podcast are books we've gotten to read before they go on sale.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about them because we're excited about them.
Yep.
I've got a list of books to talk about right after this little segment, and it's all books I've gotten to read before they go on sale.
Yeah.
And I can talk about them because I've read them.
Yep.
I'm not going to talk about a book that someone sent me 3 pages of a preview.
No.
I get disappointed when major publishers send out press releases that have 2 or 3 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And, but here's all the variant covers.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Do not care about the variant covers.
I do think that some comic publishers put out way too many press releases.
Yes.
You don't need to have a press release because of a specific variant cover.
Yeah, my preference is for more of like the Boom Image way of doing it. I mean, Image does a ton, but Image usually will do like a weekly FOC wrap-up one where it's like, here's the books you need to know about. Like, let's talk about all the important books as well as everything else for the week. And Boom does the same thing, where Boom's like, here's like the big single issues or a big collection, and then here's a list of everything else. Instead of doing every single day, like, here's another book that FOCs this week.
Those are literally the 2 publishers that do the things I hate most.
So Image, I know, will do press release stuff, and I mean, that's I can see what you're saying there, but
Boom does press releases for every individual issue of their comics.
I don't think I see as many of those.
I
guess we're on different mailing lists, thank God.
I guess we are. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe I'm on way too many mailing lists. Maybe those that I'm on, like, PR mailing lists.
You might be.
Because I don't need those.
Yeah. Dynamite, I think I get way too many of, mostly because we don't stock Dynamite stuff for the shelves, so I almost never care about what's being promoted by Dynamite. But yeah, the fact that almost every day there's another Dynamite PR thing, just noise. Just noise.
So, we are almost at a full hour already.
Oh, no.
And I've got a list of books I want to talk about, and
Okay.
you've got a couple as well.
I do.
So I'll be quick and to the point. Lately I've been finding that AWA is on fire. Artists, writers, and artisans, that publisher, they're the people that currently do Ribbon Queen, which I love and raved about. They do Sins of the Salton Sea, which I like very much. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I like about AWA is they give us PDFs of almost every issue of a series, so I can just keep reading them in advance. I had this on my list for an episode or 2 ago, but forgot to talk about them. The JMS, Michael Straczynski, new book from AWA, The Madness.
Okay.
Madness is good.
Oh, cool.
It's
I like the artist a whole
It's violent. It's a superhero revenge story.
Cool.
and I can't remember if I've read 1 or 2 issues, but I really liked it.
Nice.
But I also, from them this week, read Rumpus Room #1,
Okay.
the new Mark Russell book.
Oh, okay.
And the art is by Ant-Man Ramon Rosanas.
Oh, cool.
And it is more along the lines of Mark Russell social commentary on the 1%.
Okay.
It's a good story about a rich dude who's just too powerful. And we don't even know what he's doing to be investigated, but it's how he handles being investigated.
Okay.
And it's so twisted.
No, that's good.
I read the first issue. It's really good. I'm going to pitch it to a lot of people. The art is excellent. The story is excellent. And that just goes onto the list of AWA books that are coming out recently that just keep hitting.
That's great.
Yeah. Rumpus Room #1. I don't know if we've done FOCs yet, but it's good.
I don't know.
And The Madness and Ribbon Queen.
Yeah.
Sin the Sultan Sea only has one more. It's about over, I think. Yes. So everything else I have is DC.
Okay.
And yours are also DC.
Yeah.
We both read the Superman Annual.
We did. Yeah, that comes out this week.
It's real good. It's setting up a lot of stuff for the future, and
Yeah.
Dal thinks that you're only going to like it if you're reading Superman.
I don't know if I would go that far, but I think it's for that audience.
But if you haven't read Superman in a while, or even if, because Superman's only up to issue, 5?
5 or 6.
But if you didn't start at #1, and we've been talking about Superman since it restarted.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books at DC.
Pick up this annual, because it's a bunch of different artists, a bunch of good artists, Mahmoud Asrar.
Yeah.
Each doing a different element of what's happening in the super stories.
Right.
And these are basically Superman lists for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, the basic concept is that if you've not been reading Superman, the Daily Planet has a new editor-in-chief, Lois Lane. And so while Superman is out doing Superman stuff and Clark Kent is not around, Lois Lane is trying to get all of her reporters to actually do their jobs. And she's frustrated with how typical everything is. So she basically switches everyone's assignments.
It's like the great DJ Hunt on Radio 1.
Exactly like that. I think that's probably where Josh Williamson got it from.
Probably, yeah.
So it makes for some very fun stuff, as like Steve Lombardi, the sports guy, ends up having to go interview Livewire in prison because that's the crime beat.
But she doesn't want to talk about sports.
Right. And he's real lazy. So it makes for a lot of fun stuff like that as characters are kind of pushed outside their comfort zone, and you get introduced to a lot of different elements of what's currently going on in the Superman books. It is both acknowledging a lot of the storylines from the first few issues, but also setting up kind of the next phase for all those storylines. Who's running for mayor of Metropolis? Why did Lex Luthor have a past history as a superhero in Metropolis, and we've never heard about it until now? All this sort of stuff.
Really good stuff.
Yeah.
I read Night Terrors 3 and 4, and I've actually liked the Night Terrors main miniseries, but here's what I hate. It's a 4-issue miniseries. It's a 6-issue miniseries.
It's always been a 6-issue miniseries.
There was the First Blood special and the Night's End special, but they should have just called it 0 through 5 or 1 through 6.
Yeah, because it's non-optional.
Yeah.
It's not like you get to the end of 4 and it's like, you got an ending.
No,
well, there's this Omega that's an epilogue.
No. It's not an epilogue.
Nuh-uh.
It is smack dab in the middle of the story.
Yeah, I hate that stuff.
It is a huge cliffhanger, and that bothers me to no end, but I do like Night Terrors.
That's good.
Did you read Penguin?
I did.
Penguin #1's real good.
I liked it. It definitely seems like a book that's probably going to run about 12 issues. It doesn't feel like one that has a huge structure to it, despite DC very much pitching it as an ongoing series. It feels as limited as most Tom King DC things.
But Tom King is doing a good job of taking villains like the Riddler in One Bad Day and really giving them a gravitas, making them like more imposing.
The two things that were really interesting to me are, one, that it is explicitly set in the current DC continuity. This isn't like Danger Street or Human Target, where it's like, it's using DC characters, but it's not
Batman
really DC
Killing
continuity.
Time. Although it does play a lot into Batman Killing Time.
I was going to say Batman Killing Time absolutely isn't continuity because Penguin is also
a
sequel to Killing Time.
Yeah, but Killing Time takes place, 10 years ago in
It's
DC?
in the past, yeah. It's in, I think,
his earlier days.
Yeah. So if you did read Batman Killing Time by Tom King and David Marquez, definitely pick up Penguin because this is very much more of that story. And if you are picking up Penguin, I would recommend at some point checking out the Killing Time collection because there's stuff in there. you don't need to know in that they tell you what you need to know in Penguin #1, but it is definitely worth checking out to understand some of the context for what certain characters are saying and doing in the series. But I like Penguin #1. It's a darker, character-driven crime story.
And they very smartly call it Penguin, not Batman: the Penguin.
Right. Although
It's
Batman's
not
in
a
it.
Batman book. He
But
just
he's-
may be in it a tiny
Right.
bit.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a solid first issue, and I think people who like the more noir aspects of Tom King stuff, which I think is most people, are going to enjoy it.
And I will say that I liked Penguin 1 a lot more than I liked Killing Time #1. I like Killing Time.
Killing Time has a different energy to it. Killing
Yeah.
Time is way more widescreen
Action.
thriller, as opposed to Penguin, which is a lot more of like a slow burn character thing.
And the books that you've read that I have not.
Yeah, I wanted to read the first part of Gotham War, but it was not working on DC's preview site, so I had to skip that one. But I ended up reading Batman Gargoyle of Gotham #1, the new Raphael Grampa Black Label series that's coming out. The story is okay, but the art is so gorgeous, and I would assume that anyone who wants to buy it or would enjoy reading it is doing it because Raphael Grampa's art is so fun to look at. And he really does some fun stuff in this.
Yeah, this is a book that, like Doctor Strange Fall Sunrise, you're not buying for the story.
Yeah, it's a Black Label thing, so it's kind of not really set in a specific Batman continuity. It's very much Batman going up against a new villain, and simultaneously Batman wondering if the idea of Bruce Wayne is getting in the way of his effectiveness as Batman in Gotham City. So it's kind of, those are the two things it's really dealing with. And then I read Fire and Ice, Welcome to Smallville #1, which I don't remember the Fire and Ice preview thing that I guess was in like a Power Girl special that I probably didn't read.
Yeah.
So I don't, the setup for this, it kind of assumes that you read that, because
Okay.
the setup, which feels like a longer story, was like a panel in Fire and Ice, Welcome to Smallville #1, like why these characters are in Smallville, what they're doing there. Which is kind of a weakness of it, but overall I thought the story was incredibly fun. It's written by, I want to say it's Joanna Starrer, who did Sirens of the City for Boom,
Which I liked a lot.
and the art's by Natasha Bustos, who
Moon Girl and Devil
Moon Girl
Dinosaur.
and Devil Dinosaur. And it's just a really fun, if you liked the classic J.M. DeMatteis, Keith Giffen, Justice League International stuff, the more comedic aspects of these characters, you'll really like it. It's very fun. It's very charming.
These are not the Tom King,
No.
Grant Smallwood Human Target characters.
It's Fire and Ice are two longtime superhero friends who are at a kind of a low point in their superhero career. They're basically exiled to Smallville, where Ice is hoping to get a fresh start and like be a part of the community, and Fire's like, how do I get back on the superhero A-list? And those two things are kind of at cross purposes, which lead to a lot of friction between them as friends. There's a last page reveal of a character that's going to be a part of the book that I was instantly like, oh, this is for longtime fans. I love this.
Okay.
I love that this character is who you're putting in this book. Like, that's the tone. You got it. You nailed it.
I have guesses, but I don't want to do that because
Well-
sometimes I do that on the podcast.
Right, we'll talk.
And I'm right and
You're
you're
welcome
angry.
to guess off air, and I will confirm or deny, or you can just wait and read it for yourself. I thought Fire and Ice was really Fire and Ice: Welcome to Smallville, not to be confused with Dynamite's Fire and Ice, which is a Frazetta thing. The DC one I liked a lot. I thought it was very, very fun and a very cute, funny DC superhero series.
Have you seen the Kevin Maguire variant cover?
I did, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
One of the nice things in the preview PDF that DC put together, they have all the variants at the end, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
like, oh, these are real cute. Like I remember seeing them in very small versions in a catalog,
yeah.
But this is like, oh, it's great. Yeah, the Kevin Maguire one's really solid. So those I read, and those are really good.
Well, Dal, next week is podcast episode 650.
Wow,
And you know what we're doing for it?
bunch of useless backups.
The exact same stuff we do every week.
Yay!
Thanks for listening.
Keep reading comics.
This has been Contest of Challengers. Thanks for listening. Keep reading comics. Challengers is located at 1845 Northwestern Avenue in the Bucktown neighborhood of Chicago. 773-278-0155. Keep up to date with new releases and events at challengerscomics.com and help fund this podcast at patreon.com/challengers.